Can't get enough of Kelly and Ramya?
We're now on YouTube for you to indulge in highlights from our show.
I'm JJ Hunt, describer and lifelong backpacker. Join me for some armchair travel as we share description-rich stories from all around the globe.
So JJ, do you ever get a feeling sometimes not only are you invited over to a visit or to a party, but as people start circling around that there's been a heads up that let's just wind JJ up and get him going?
Yeah, I think some people like to wind me up, and then others are like, uh-oh, you wound up.
What
He's
have I
going.
done?
And you wind him back down.
Before JJ starts, does anyone want anything to eat or drink, please, for the next hour? Well, JJ, we have to say we never complain about it and won't, because you bring so much rich content to us. Let's go to Vietnam today.
Yeah, Vietnam, you know, I've visited a couple of times back in the 90s, mid 90s, and then again in 2019. And it was a really interesting thing to do. It was the first time I had the experience of being in a place, 25 years ago as a backpacker and getting to go back as a dad with my kids and kind of see the changes from one time to another. So it was really interesting. I was glad I did it.
Why'd you do it twice?
Well, back in the 90s, I had family that was living in Hanoi, and so when I was backpacking through Southeast Asia, I kind of made Hanoi a bit of a hub, and so I would come in and out of Hanoi and spend time with them, and I really got to know the city a little bit, and I got to travel around a fair bit. And then so much was changing at that point. This was about the same time that the American embassy was coming back into the country. So you could say that westernization was happening in the 90s. So I really wanted to go back, see some of those same spots that I adored, see some of the places, the things, the food that I loved, but also wanted to see how westernization had changed the country. A lot of prosperity. It has gone from being a place that was off the beaten track to being very much on the track for lots of not only backpackers but tourists as well. So I just wanted to see what the difference was, and oh boy, there were some differences.
Wow, I wonder when you think about something like that, you think post World War II, Japan, Germany, different things would have changed versus somebody going beforehand. Things change. But even afterward, if you had been able to do that in 1948, visit Japan and then visit in 1966 and so on, the immense changes. And I know if you look at some of the old TV shows, you can see that. But going back with your family too, with the kids, I don't know if you made any changes in where you wanted to go, because they've been old enough to go pretty well anywhere you went in your previous trip that you were allowed to, but you want to get into some of those changes you observed that really make us either feel the West or just things that you said, wow, this is 100% different than when I was here before.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of those changes were really dramatic, and they did affect like how we traveled around, with the kids. So when I was there in the 1990s, for example, I mean, the traffic in Vietnam, especially in the cities, is always kind of wild. It's bonkers, right? So entire families, piling onto motorcycles, and you've got like scooters and bicycles being the dominating, vehicle at the time, with some cars mixed in. And people piling on goods, boxes, bags onto the backs of bicycles and cars, or bicycles and motorcycles, to the point where you can barely see the vehicle that's at the heart of this. And the way it used to work back in the 90s is that you didn't cross the street at a light. The flow of traffic would just be going by, the street absolutely packed with scooters and bikes and a few cars. And the way you had to cross as a sighted person is just confidently walk across the street at a steady pace.
Oh.
And the drivers, all of whom were honking their horns, they would weave around you. And you needed that confidence to let the traffic flow around you. If you stopped or even hesitated, the drivers wouldn't be able to predict your movements. And that's when you would get into trouble. But in 2019, when we went back, there were way more cars on the road in lots of towns, especially in the cities, more cars than bicycles and scooters. And car traffic is different than bicycle and scooter traffic. You do not step into the road when cars are coming at you. You get out of their way. So we were grabbing onto grabbing onto the arms of the kids if we ever had to cross the street, because it was a much scarier situation to cross the street.
So
on
there
any
you
given
put your
day.
prayer in first and then start going. But when you went the first time, I mean, you talk still unsafe, people piling stuff on vehicles. I mean, it would be like a treasure hunt for all the stuff that must have fallen off of vehicles, even though I know, I jest, because they do it every day. They know what they're doing to make sure that doesn't happen.
It is the system. And that's the thing with a lot of these that you find when you travel. Things are always different, but it's just a different system. People have different ways of doing things, and it might not work back home, but it certainly works in this context. I remember one of my favorite, motorcycle sightings was a whole family sitting on a motorcycle, but they had a pig between them and the seat. So they'd come from the butcher, or they were going to the butcher, I don't know, one way or the other, and they had a splayed pig on the motorcycle with the chin on the handlebars, one arm and one leg hanging off of each side of the bike. And then they sat, four of them, the whole family, on the back of the pig as they rode. And again, I was jaw dropped, but this kind of thing all the time. Like, it's just
a
pretty
living
common.
pig
That's
too,
just
right? He was a living pig heading off to market or to the butcher.
No, maybe it was a pet pig, guys.
Wow. Oh, you dream.
Yeah.
A pet pig.
What else was an obvious change, or an obvious, like, wow, this feels much more Western than it used to be for Vietnam?
I really found the Westernization, the garbage situation was a really sad point that you could see, because there's a lot of wonderful prosperity that has come with Westernization and greater travel and more tourism. But the garbage. So when I was there in the mid-90s, I would watch the garbage sweepers working all day long. These are folks in conical straw hats using handmade brooms that had long bristles fanned out in a wide V shape. And it seemed to me, just observationally, that the system for keeping the streets clean was that people would take their household garbage to the streets and just kind of dump their household garbage in the gutters. And then the sweepers would come several times a day, sweeping up, collecting the garbage in large baskets that they would hang off of carts or bicycles. And again, the system that didn't make a lot of sense for me as a Canadian, but it did appear to work there, because I think in no small part, the families weren't generating a lot of garbage. A lot of the food back then was fresh or bought from vendors who were wrapping their food in banana leaves, not a lot of packaging. So the street sweepers, who were employed all day long, they could stay on top of it, and the streets were pretty clean. But Westernization meant a lot more packaging, plastic garbage, and that plastic garbage piles up fast. And then to get rid of it, they burn it, which is toxic and it stinks.
Oh.
So gutters and streams and even beaches can be absolutely overwhelmed with garbage. It's really depressing and disheartening, and it's absolutely 100% an export of the West. This is on us.
Yeah, and sadly, JJ, this is such a parallel to so many people's travel experiences, to maybe where their families were raised, where they were raised before they came to North America, and then going back and thinking, yeah, this place is more Westernized now because it stinks, because there's garbage.
Yeah,
that's so
right.
Unfortunate. Tell us more about the beaches.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had a kind of hit and miss beach experience because of this very phenomenon. We wanted to go to some place that was a little bit, not the regular tourist route. So we found a beach, a fishing village that had really nice beaches. That's what we'd read. It's called Phan Rang. Pardon my pronunciation. And it was really appealing to be in a place that wasn't for tourists. This was a fishing village with a really nice beach. Unfortunately, when we got there, we discovered that the beach was so polluted. We couldn't swim. We couldn't even walk on the beach barefoot. It was too uncomfortable. And again, we weren't angry. We felt guilty about this. This was our influence. So we had to move on, and instead we went to the tourist beach where all the guidebooks told us to go, Nha Trang. And at that beach, the local resorts and the local government are very intentional about cleaning up the beaches for tourists. So we were really happy about those clean beaches, but we felt lousy about our part in the system. Why do tourists deserve garbage-free beaches, but not locals, not the fishers? And again, these beaches, once you take the garbage away, gorgeous. Turquoise water, pale, clean sand, the color of milky tea. And in Nha Trang, the beach is backed by a boardwalk lined with palm trees and modern high-rise condos and resorts. Just an absolutely lovely and very quirky town, by the way. While we were walking through town, we noticed that all the signs on the storefronts were in Cyrillic, Russian. And we asked some people about it. Yeah, right. We're like, what? Huh? Dude, what just happened here? We asked about it, and it turned out there were direct flights every day from many different parts of Russia straight to Nha Trang, right to this beach town. This was a hotspot, a vacation hotspot for middle-class Russians, in the same way that Cuba is a hotspot for people from Ontario and Quebec and the East Coast. So plane loads of sun-seeking Russians arriving in town every day.
Wow, there must have been like that ownership of places too, or just spending the rubles there. JJ, when you describe the beach so dirty, is it what people are throwing on it or what gets washed up? Like, is it just left as a garbage dump when you said walking on it? I'm trying to picture this because you just think how much pollution, the plastic, the burning. What was that like?
So some of it is people going to the beach, using whatever they brought with them, and then just leaving it there. But a lot of it is washed up in the water. So it gets thrown into streams. The streams lead to to the ocean. The ocean then washes it up onto the beach. And so I actually had some home videos of plastic bottles, plastic wrappers, just like rolling in the surf back and forth as the water washed up, garbage, and really you couldn't swim for the garbage that was bumping into you in the water. It was just that packed with garbage.
I just was trying to figure out how that worked. Dalat, is that how you say it? Located in the Central Highlands. Dalat.
Yeah,
oh,
Dalat
my goodness.
or Dalat. So Vietnam's delta is very hot and muggy, and this was not a climate to the liking of colonists in the early 1900s. So what they did was they followed local knowledge and they headed up to Dalat, which was then a small village in the pine forest of the Central Highlands. The colonists loved it, and they created a resort town 1,500 meters above sea level, and that became this really quirky hill station with European-style villas and parks and golf courses. Now jump ahead 100 years, and Dalat is the main tourist destination for local Vietnamese families. A lot of families vacation there, and it's a romantic spot because it's cool at night, so you can snuggle up with your honey. And the food is amazing because so much produce is grown in the region, like strawberries and artichokes. So you get these specialties like extravagant hot pots where you eat from a pot of bubbling, boiling broth at your table. And then when you're done eating, you have avocado ice cream, kinds of foods that you don't necessarily get anywhere else in Vietnam.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness. Water puppets. What is this?
Yeah, water puppets.
Wait. Did you tell us about the hotel at Dalat? The strange looking one?
Oh, no, sorry. I cut you off on that.
The treehouse? I want to know about that.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much to talk about. When you're trying to describe a whole country like Vietnam in a few minutes, you got to move around fast, right? Yeah, so there's this crazy hotel, literally called the Crazy House in Dalat, which is this mishmash of free-form, room-sized shapes that are connected by a maze of spiral staircases and narrow catwalks and bridges. It's totally bonkers. It's like, so the rooms are kind of like hobbit houses that are painted with murals and lit with skylights and fairy lights. Like, picture a tree fort on acid. It's totally nonsensical. It's wonderfully bizarre, downright weird, and it's kind of part of this holiday vibe. Like, it's Dalat. Sometimes I've heard people describe it as like the Niagara Falls of Vietnam because it's so many tourists and travelers, and it's just goofy.
Do you know when that was built?
It's been built for decades. So I think that the person who owns it, the woman who owns it and who's decorated it and conceived it, was the daughter of a high official in the Communist Party. And so she was able to, over decades, get away with this behavior, which normally you would not get away with in Vietnam because she had an upper up in her family.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, now we got to go to the water puppets.
Water puppets. Yeah, so you see these little water puppet theaters popped up all around Vietnam. Again, the Mekong Delta, a lot of water in Vietnam. And so the idea here with water puppetry is the puppets rise out of a stage of water, like a platform of water. They're mounted on long hollow tubes or traditionally bamboo poles that run underwater and then go under the backdrop to the puppeteers. And then strings run the length of that hollow pole so that puppeteers can not only move the puppet in the pool, but they can pull the strings which are tied to the puppet's arms and legs and move them around. So it's the same principle as a marionette, where the strings go up to a puppeteer who's above the stage. But in this case, the strings go down and along in through this pole to the back of the stage behind where no one can see. Really, really quaint and charming. The puppets are usually wood and painted brightly. Sometimes they have like simple hinges at the arms so the arms can be raised and lowered. They're often beating drums or lifting fishing baskets or dancing. And then there are animal water puppets too, like water buffalo and fish, and they zip around in the water. Like it's a very energetic performance.
Wow. Wow. You must have loved that.
Wild.
Oh, yeah. JJ, it's wild when we get a chance to talk to you and never, as we finish up, ever have enough time to get into everything. Thanks, pal.
Cheers. We'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks for watching.
You can catch Kelly and Ramya weekdays from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern on AMI.